Look, what I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made.
JD Vance is the vice presidential nominee for President Trump. Now, if you had a time machine, if you go back 2 weeks, would he have picked JD Vance again? I doubt it. And JD is super smart. He also has a long history of public commentary.
Talking about replacement theory, there's no big grand conspiracy. This is a country who's been enriched by immigrants from all quarters of the world. There's no the problem.
It's shameful for you to accuse me of that, given my family's
danger.
It's shameful for you to accuse me of that.
My turn, pal. My turn. Oh, buddy.
I've said in the past that you compared abortion to slavery, even in the case of the 10-year-old Ohio girl that made headlines across the country. You said two wrongs don't make a right. It sounds tonight as if you're saying there are some exceptions I would accept. Can you specifically tell us what you might accept? Sure. As an exception?
Look, I've always believed in reasonable exceptions. This is a misrepresentation of my view. What you find consistently is that many of the most unhappy and most miserable and most angry people in our media are childless adults. Let's just be honest about it. Because look, the elite model, the American dream to the elites is get as much credentials as you can, get as much money as you can, get the most prestigious job, and that's where you're gonna find your self-worth. But I gotta be honest with you, most of our mainstream reporters are not impressive enough to find a lot of self-meaning in their jobs. They're just not good enough at it.
I've heard from many women, most of whom are conservative, and they would very much like to vote for President Trump and you, but Senator, they are disappointed. So nuns and priests aside, do you agree that there are people who very much love this country and are invested in its future, but they also happen to be childless?
Oh, of course I believe that, Trey. And if you look at the full context of what I said, it's very clear the Democrats have tried to take this thing out of context and blow it out of proportion, which is what they always do, Trey, because they don't have an agenda to run on themselves. And if you look at what the American people are most concerned about, Trey, it's not an out of context quip that I made 3 years ago. Sure, well, like a lot of people, I criticized Trump back in 2016, and I'd ask folks not to judge me based on what I said in 2016, because I've been very open about the fact that I did say those critical things, and I regret them, and I regret being wrong about the guy. I think that he was a good president. I think he made a lot of good decisions for people, and I think he took a lot of flack. And as you probably appreciate, Alicia, you know, I've taken a lot of flack myself over the last few years for standing up for the president's voters, but also standing up for the agenda. And I think that's the most important thing, is not what you said 5 years ago, but whether you're willing to stand up and take the heat and take the hits for actually defending the interests of the American people, because that's what this business of politics should be all about.
No, please don't look at my old tweets that were critical of Donald Trump. I have completely changed my mind. He was a very good president, very good president. He incited the insurrection. It was great. It was wonderful president. I mean, he stole millions of dollars from US taxpayers by funneling it into his private businesses. He was a great president. Please don't hold me accountable for my tweets that were actually correct in criticizing Donald Trump.
Look, what I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? I just wanted to ask that question and propose that maybe if we want a healthy ruling class in this country, we should invest more, we should vote more, we should support more people who actually have kids, because those are the people who ultimately have a more direct stake in the future of this country.
Now the right wing, their #1 go-to move is, missing context. If you listen to all of JD Vance for his entire life, then you would have proper context. This is an old trick invented by Sam Harris. If you haven't read every one of my books, then you quoted me out of context.
All these great replacement theory writings that JD Vance agrees with, some sicko got this information that he's peddling with, again, those extremists that he runs around with, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ted Cruz, all these guys, they just want to stoke this racial violence. We're tired of it. We have a, hold on, JD, stop interrupting me.
This is disgusting.
I'd like to get
here's exactly what happens when the media and people like Tim Ryan accuse me of engaging in the great replacement theory. I'll tell you exactly what happens, Tim. What happens is that my own children, my biracial children, get attacked by scumbags online and in person because you are so desperate for political power that you'll accuse me, the father of 3 beautiful biracial babies, of engaging in racism. We are sick of it.
I'm not racist. Some of my best children are biracial. I mean, the use of his children as political props when it's convenient for him on a debate stage is pretty gross. And to be quite frank, I was completely unaware that he had biracial children because he never talks about it. He doesn't take the mantle of wanting to fight against, discriminatory practices against people of color, certainly against people who are biracial.
We read at least a couple articles every week of young people, underage girls who have been raped, or women who have had significant problems with their pregnancy, not be able to get help in the state. They got to go to Indiana, they got to go to Illinois. And that's not good enough for JD Vance. He supports a national abortion ban in which he wants women to have to get a passport and go to Canada. Like, we've got to have some moderation on this issue. He's got a very extreme position. JD, you called rape inconvenient, right? Rape is not inconvenient. It's a significant tragedy. And he thinks that we should have Ohio state law, which says if you're raped or pregnant through incest, that you should be forced to have the baby.
Well, first of all, I did not call rape inconvenient. Congressman Ryan knows that's not true.
You have said in the past that you compared abortion to slavery, even in the case of the 10-year-old Ohio girl that made headlines across the country. You said 2 wrongs don't make a right. It sounds tonight as if you're saying there are some exceptions I would accept. Can you specifically tell us what you might accept as an exception?
Look, I've always believed in reasonable exceptions. This is a misrepresentation of my view.
Oh, it's a misrepresentation of your views, except it's not. Now, this is what political candidates often do. And my job is to make sure that people are informed on what the reality is. They will stand there and lie to the American people, lie to their constituents with a straight face, and that's what JD Vance did there. So what's the reality? Okay, well, Tim Ryan brought up the fact that Vance had referred to pregnancies that occur through rape as inconvenient. Inconvenient. Vance said, I didn't say that.
I think he probably would have picked somebody like Glenn Youngkin from Virginia in an attempt to broaden out his base. Instead, he went with JD Vance, feeling, because he was right, that at the time he had a very solid advantage in the race against Joe Biden. I agree that our country has moved away from caring about the future because too few Americans care about having children. I totally agree with that. However, this description that JD Vance is using, is that politically smart or is it politically damaging? Now, again, he doesn't have a time machine. He can't go back and undo something he said now 3.5 years ago. With that said, Democrats are, of course, using this as a club with which to beat Donald Trump and JD Vance. They're trying to run up the gender gap. So one of the things to understand about this election cycle is that the gender gap is larger than it has ever been in the history of American politics in all likelihood. Males overwhelmingly vote for Trump. Females, particularly single females, overwhelmingly vote for Biden. And so they're going to try to find some sort of wedge to claim that all Republicans are sexist. And this is the wedge they're using today.
It seems to be working really well, if that's the wedge that they're using. And look, I mean, I will say this, Cenk. Kamala Harris, so far in her campaigning, has done a good job in focusing on that wedge issue, labeling JD Vance and the Republican ticket as weird rather than hyper focusing on threat to democracy, which clearly was not effective messaging. It did not help Biden much in the election. And so now you have Democrats kind of lining up to mock the Republican ticket, make fun of them, call them weird, as opposed to constantly fear-mongering about the Republican ticket. So there were definitely portions of what Shapiro was saying there that I definitely agree with.